It's to help women break the patterns of that diet culture, kind of toxic diet culture mentality, the all in, all out, off
Mhm.
and on type of cycle, and help them break those down, those stories that are holding them back from the true transformation that they want. And, I say health and body goals, and it's going to be that, but it's also going to be a lot more than that too. Because when you're really aware, you can take all of that and you can show up for yourself in totally different ways. We do a lot of nervous system and stress management
Cool.
type of work. And then we also do talk about using nutrition and movement as ways to relieve stress and to just help you feel better every single day. Like, even if that's eating a brownie,
Mhm.
like it's
Yep.
not like, oh, I don't know, we must only eat clean organic foods to manage our stress. So I do use personality based training and nutrition assessments for that as well, neurotyping.
Awesome.
And then we do talk about actually applying that too and how we can do that through tracking or through, actual workouts and things like that too.
Let's link up with Krista on the Fix. She's a wellness coach with a focus on mental well-being and physical strength.
What's going on, Fix listeners? I'm your host, Krista Huber, and we are rolling right into our second week celebrating Women's History Month for the month of March, where I am featuring another amazing female guest. This is my friend, fellow wellness coach, Abby O'Sullivan. She's also a podcaster. We plug all of that down in the show notes and throughout the episode. And today she's talking all about boundaries, non-negotiables, knowing your worth, and really trying to step into places, spaces, areas of your career where you are just in alignment with yourself and figuring out what those things are that might be blocking you from getting there. Abby arrived at a lot of these things through her own personal experience of being a lash artist, then transitioning into the nutrition and fitness space, having her own transformation with fitness, not from a physical perspective, but really from more of an internal and emotional perspective, which she kind of breaks down and talks about throughout the show. And now fast forwarding all the way to today, where she recently started a podcast and is now really building out a very unique and interesting coaching program that, yes, ties in nutrition and fitness, but really more so focuses on establishing your self-worth, especially as a female. And this episode is just jam-packed with a lot of fun and some good jokes and some good laughs and conversations about dating, but also just it really serves as a great reminder of the magic that can happen in your life when you get better at listening to your gut and establishing your intuition and just really moving from a place that's honoring yourself first and foremost. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Abby and introduce you to another great guest for The Fix. Hope you guys enjoy this one. Abby, welcome to the Fix podcast. I'm so excited to finally have this conversation. I feel like I know you have a lash wife, so we'll say that you're my Instagram wife because we DM
Yeah.
each other so much. I talk to you literally all day long. And
Yeah.
I was like, we need to make a podcast happen.
Yeah.
So first things first, I know you've listened to my show a couple times, so you probably know the signature questions that are coming your way. But to kick this off, to introduce yourself to the listener, who is Abby and why? This is the most important part of the question. Why specifically should we care about what Abby has to say today?
Because I'm fucking awesome.
Hell yeah, girl. Love it. She is a fucking awesome. I will vouch for that.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Number one, I'm so excited to be here and finally be doing this. We've only been talking about it for a few months.
Months.
Yeah. So I'm so excited to be here. And I am a longtime beauty industry lash extension artist turned fitness health coach, which is a whole story in of itself. But I love to coach women. I love to coach women that are in business, entrepreneurs, like people who are super, super busy because I know that life myself. And so I think that's also a good reason to hang out for the rest of the episode so you can get some tips.
I
and some
love it.
insight.
I love it. And we were talking a little trash about our lashes before the show, because neither of us, we both care about our lash extensions, and neither one of us were prepared. And I'm like, oh my God, I need my lashes refilled. And I'm sitting across from a lash expert. So no judgment. We're in a no judgment zone anyways. Yes. But before we get into all that, I'm really, really looking forward to kind of breaking this all down. You know, in pre-planning for this show, I was really thinking about your journey into the health and fitness space being very different than my own and a lot of other people that have come onto the podcast. And I certainly want to highlight that throughout this conversation, because I think there are just huge parallels that we can make to someone else's nutrition and fitness journey, not only in your own personal journey in the health space, but also from a business perspective too. I think all of it relates really well. And, you know, my brain always goes to looking for the nutrition lesson in our everyday life lessons. So we're definitely going to do that throughout this conversation. But before we do that, my other favorite question to ask, I actually have no idea if you drink coffee, so I kind of hope you do, but if you don't, it's okay. Every one of my FYX guests, I need to know, what is your go-to coffee order? What do you like to sip on in the morning?
Well, I actually do. I just started making coffee again at home because I was going out and getting it every day.
That's the story of my life.
Yeah, but I don't really like at home. It's a little different. I did just get a new like almond milk, sweet, creamy, creamer add-in, whatever yesterday.
What brand?
Silk, I think.
Okay,
I really wanted that Chobani stuff and I searched for it, and nobody's selling it around here. So
it's I'm not going to lie, it's hard to find, but it's so funny. That was one of my most responded to stories, I think, in like 6 months.
People
so
were
I'm
like,
out here trying to put all this nutrition content out, and everyone's like, ooh, coffee creamer. I'm like, okay, it's still on brand. It's all right.
Oh, I was talking about my lash flutters the other day, and somebody was like, oh, I need to know about those. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I will share the beauty secrets. Don't worry. Favorite hairspray, whatever. So there's a local coffee shop, like super close to me, is where I normally sit and go work too. And they have this latte. The coffee shop is called Architect Coffee Company, and they have the Architect latte. And I swear, I think about that anywhere, like everywhere else, because it's so good. They make their own caramel sauce. I don't think they make their own vanilla, but I think they have like a house-made caramel. I just said it 2 different ways at once. It's like vanilla caramel, and I think that's it. I think it's pretty basic, but they also do Himalayan pink salt at the end. I don't know. It's just so good.
Oh, that sounds delicious. Now I have to come visit you.
Yeah,
is this a coffee shop that you've shown me? Like, that's really cute too. Like the way it's designed. There's somewhere I feel like you sent me one time and you're like, this coffee shop is super vibey.
I think I was in Northwest Arkansas in Rogers, Arkansas. That was Onyx Coffee. They're very big down there, and they have the like most aesthetic Instagrammable coffee shop ever. I mean, literally every spot is Instagram worthy. So it's so pretty. And very vibey.
Like we got to make a trip to
very
Arkansas.
Bougie. Architect is pretty too. It has a really nice, clean, and like little lights and stuff, and everyone's super friendly. But yeah, it's like the place I go in the morning, and you're so happy to have it.
Yes, it's like your treat. And I love that it's also your place to go and work, because it's like your creative space. It's really cool. I bet a lot of the thoughts that you're about to share, maybe you've had, and realizations you've had sitting in that coffee shop. So it's a perfect segue.
Yes.
Perfect segue to talk about where you've come from and where you're going, because I know that I really wanted to have this episode happen now, because you really recently made a huge decision in your life and in your business. And I know it's a little bit scary, but I think you are super honest always on social media. You've got your podcast, which we'll make sure we'll plug throughout this conversation, and so that we can send the FYX listeners over to listen to it too and check it out. But walk me backwards a little bit. So give us the history on how you got into lashes. And I know you've gone in and out of the lash space more than once, because you shared with me personally that this isn't your first time of being like, all right, I think I'm going to hang up my lash hat. So tell us about that. And then from there, we'll kind of work our way into how you got into the fitness and nutrition and health space.
Absolutely. It is sort of one and the same, really. I became an esthetician. I will say the podcast is where I'm really honest. I feel like still on social media, I've had to work on that vulnerability factor. it's still, I have felt like it's a screen for me to sort of put that veil up of like, everything's cool, but I feel like I'm better on the podcast. And that's what I love
super
about the
interesting, because I
podcast.
feel like people may say the opposite. That's really interesting, especially because you're new to podcasting too.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of an extension of what happens in the lash room. And I'm very like, we talk about everything behind closed doors.
Oh yeah.
So it's very easy for me to talk about it into a mic with no one watching me.
Okay. That makes sense.
So when I got into aesthetics, it was just a time I had left college essentially and was just sort of like, what am I doing with my life? What would I like to do with my life? And I always thought massage therapy would be cool. But aesthetics actually ended up being like the curriculum. Really, I was drawn to that beauty, makeup, skincare, having struggled with my skin myself. I really wanted to go into that profession. So in my almost mid-20s, I went to aesthetics school. And then then that was in like 2008, and lashes weren't really this big thing yet. So I was looking through magazines, the spa industry magazines, and saw lash extensions and started playing around with some of the type that you can buy from like Sally's beauty supply or like beauty stores or Target or whatever. They're like little clusters. Started playing with those on my teacher, and it was like, holy shit, lashes are amazing. Like everyone has to have these. I have to go get certified. And it was a long time before I got actually good at them because it's a very tedious process.
Super hard. I was going to ask you like a bunch of questions about that too.
Yeah, it's a very tedious. And back then the products were quite different. The industry I've watched this industry and I still think it's a baby industry, the lash extension industry itself. But the product, the techniques, the way people learn, like everything has improved 100%. And I mean, now there's people who are teaching it for like $7 or something like that. And not great, but that's in any profession. Like you have people who really care about what they do and people who are just trying to make a buck. So it's just, it is what it is.
Yeah, we see that a lot in the nutrition coaching space. That's for sure.
Exactly. So I, sat around a lot and built a business finally. And I was actually married then. And by the time I was getting divorced, it was about the time that I was getting busier in my lash extension / aesthetics business. Cause I also used to do facials, but started trading with my hairstylist, my nail tech, and we just kind of really worked together and helped build each other out. I was networking a lot, made a lot of friends in town, kind of building my own life, which was not a reason for divorce, but it was definitely a factor in that. And I just continued to build the business, and I just got super, super busy with lashes, back to back, working all the time, and was also single at 29, 30. And since I had spent almost my entire 20s attached to someone, I basically went back to the, like, I am single. I am ready to mingle. I'm in a college town. I had girlfriends who were recently divorced. And then I had girlfriends who were just the ride or dies that will go along with anything, no matter what. And we were, we kind of partied a lot, and every weekend was like weekend warrior with the drinking, and Sunday was recovery day. So I would work like 5.5 days a week, back to back appointments, and then go out on Saturday. I would go shopping on Saturday, and then I would go out on Saturday. And I had these really interesting habits that have all sort of led into my own like evolution as a person, but filling my time a lot with just other things and not really being alone a lot, constantly like trying to date and like figure things out, which was very entertaining for my clients. I mean, those are really interesting
like
days,
you said, that's when you share a lot. It's just like anything in the beauty space. Like I feel like the guys that do my hair know everything about me. And then the only person I don't really talk to is my nail tech, but that's because like I've bounced around a lot in the last few years. But then like my lash girl, like I've only been going to this new lash girl, like maybe 5 times, and she knows my whole life. So I totally understand.
I mean, you're laying there with your eyes closed and somebody's at the top of your head, and there's something
you're either sleeping or you're talking.
There's something psychologically like legit about that. I've had discussions with lash friends and how like in therapy, like if they want to get really deep, they move to the top of your head and then you start sharing all the things, and we're literally just right there. And if you're in a private space, I mean, that's actually one thing, as I'm leaving lashes, like for we're good. It's like so weird to say it still. But I'm like, okay, you got to keep me updated on these things. Like, I got to know how this particular thing turns out because there's a lot going on right now. There's a lot of like, it's Real Housewives of whatever. But yeah, you just end up sharing a whole lot. So I guess I'll go ahead and continue because I ended up getting super burned out. Physically, mentally, emotionally, like I was cranky. I didn't really schedule myself lunch breaks. My body was hurting because you're sitting in a static position all day. And anyone,
and you're like crouched over, right?
Oh God. Yeah. You're just hunched over there's definitely ways to set yourself up for better success. But I will say when I started, none of us knew anything about that. Like posture wasn't really a big deal. And you're just like a little shrimp all day. It looked like a croissant, like the little emoji.
That's hilarious. That might be the best quote for the show.
Really, if you want to look like a croissant, just get into lashes. And if you want your body to feel like a day old, stiff, brittle croissant, like go into lashes. Like,
so actually, like kidding aside, can you describe that a little more just in terms of like how you were feeling? Because obviously the burnout component is not necessarily specific to an industry. Like I've certainly felt that way, especially being in group fitness, because a lot of it has to do with the nature of how you make money, right? And it's so much, there's an exact parallel that a lot of it's based on volume. Like I was going to make more money if I was teaching more classes. That meant more hours, more time. And we joke about it a lot in fitness. And I'm sure you could say the same in the beauty space. Like everyone is always like, oh, you must work out all the time because you're in the gym all day. And I'm like, contrary to popular belief, I barely get a workout in. Like I'm lucky if I work out 3 days a week. And on top of that, I also have a trainer just to keep me accountable because otherwise, frankly, like I could say all the things to my clients, but I won't do half of them if I'm being totally transparent. So what did that look like for you? Like, how are you feeling that you were just like, oh my God, I'm so exhausted. You making the joke about the croissant, but like, what was that like physically
it was
like?
Real.
Yeah.
Well, so I would say like, people must, think you work out all the time. Like, I'm just hungry all the time. I'm just always trying to get my next snack in all the time.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
Just, what it is you just give and give, and you give so much of yourself to what you're doing. There's a couple of things there, but physically, my left shoulder, I had this like habit of kind of like really having it in my ear. Okay. So I actually still, it's just kind of based, I think, on when I started doing volume lashes and just how I was sitting and what I was doing. It was just this like subconscious thing, and it kind of just gets stuck there and ended up with a lot of knots. And I still have some pretty like gnarly shit going on in there, but it's not as bad because I'm not stuck in that position quite as much. So the fact that I wasn't necessarily giving myself time to move during the day, even just to get out of that position. Yeah. Even when I started working out, I was still having trouble because I was working so much and I'd been that way for so long that you really have to work you have to like overcompensate for all of that sitting. So it takes a lot of
sitting's the new smoking. Like that's for a reason.
Yeah. It takes a lot of conscious effort. I ended up getting some numbness in my pinky and my ring finger. So like tingling and numbness, which when you're holding really fine point tweezers isn't exactly like the most like safe feeling. And then my right hip was really, really bothering me. I don't know what I had done to kind of get out of alignment, but I had. And so sitting was becoming extremely uncomfortable for me. I mean, I had a nice chair, but by the end of the day, I would just be like rushing through my last appointment, trying to get, like I just couldn't sit still any longer. And if you're trying to do something well, like that's a big thing of mine is quality of work and not feeling like I'm rushing people and always feeling like I'm giving them the best that I can. That was a big deal for me. And luckily, not luckily, because the spa owner she ended up with double carpal tunnel surgery, which happens quite a bit, I think, in our industry.
Yeah, I was going to ask about carpal tunnel and arthritis. I mean,
and that's what I was worried about.
No-brainer. Yeah.
Yeah, I was totally worried about that, but she had gone next door. We actually worked in this, like the spa that I was working in was in like a little office strip, and there was a physical therapist next door who does active release therapy. Okay. And that fucking saved my life. Sorry, I just cussed. Like,
this is an explicit show. Go for it.
Good.
Real and raw.
Like, mine's already marked explicit. Just so if people,
sometimes like, yes. I forget because you can mark it per episode. Yeah.
Yeah. Mine's just like labeled that way. But yeah, that totally saved my life. Like, I went in pain, and I will say it's not like, it's like that kind of pain that you're like, I know this is going to help me, but this is really hurting right now. And he just got in there and started, honestly, I need to kind of Google and see what it is, because I'm not sure if what I got was exactly what it is. Mm-hmm. But basically, he's a big, tall guy too. So he just get his hands in there and move me around and start to release stuff and start to work on all that tissue that was basically getting, connected and tight and kind of, I would say, bungled up together.
Sure.
Like, I would be asking the massage therapist in between breaks to just like rub on my left, like around really my quick, scapula,
just loosen it up before you went into the next appointment.
Yeah. I'd be burning, my shoulders would just be burning. And
how many years did you let this go on, Abby? Like, I know you described your burnout, but like, what I'm asking this because we all do this all the time. So I want to know, like, I appreciate your honesty. How, like, I think it's important for people to hear that as somebody who is in the wellness space, you're fully saying like you weren't taking care of yourself and you did deep down know better. So how long did you let this get to a point where you were just like, holy shit, I can't even get through 2 appointments back to back without being like, I'm in genuine pain?
Well, so about the time that I started getting busy, it was probably another couple of years at least. I mean, it was probably at least another couple of years. And the thing is like, you just start building and then you don't say no. And you just keep going and you say yes and you say yes and now like I was booking 3 solid months out and more if I let
because
them.
everyone's doing refills.
Yes.
Right? So you get a book.
It is a well-oiled machine. Mm-hmm.
It's just like being a personal trainer and you could totally get that same kind of burnout for sure.
Absolutely. And it's just in a different, like, I'm not standing or walking and moving, lifting things for other people all day. I'm just sitting in one place.
Yeah.
And I actually don't think that I really understood at all, like what that was going to do to my body, because they just did not teach us that in any of our classes. Our classes are like 1 or 2 days. Like, they don't talk about, they're like, yeah, make sure you're watching your posture. And now it's becoming more commonplace to talk about like, you need to eat and hydrate. We need to talk about fascia. We need to talk about your body. We need to move. I'm in, lots of Facebook groups and I see a lot of chatter about it. And I would say that that's just as the industry has boomed and so many more people are coming into it. And then as old dogs as OGs is what I call us. Yeah. We're like, oh, my body, I've had surgery and I can't, my hand is stuck like this. And like, so it's taking people that have kind of been through it to start telling everyone else, like, I don't care if you are 22 years old, take care of your body now, because it's not meant to stay in one place like that all day long for days and days and days. It's not meant to do that. Our bodies are meant to move. Right. So, physical therapist saved my life. I went into that, super in pain. And it was probably within 3 months of almost weekly and biweekly appointments that I realized I could finally sit comfortably in my car without like having to shift around. And cause like my right side, like I couldn't really drive without some weird sharp thing happening in my hip. He just saved my body. Now I will say on the flip side of that, there was not a ton of education about what I could be doing to keep me in good shape. Okay. Now he did his job. But I think with chiropractic care, acupuncture, massage therapy, like all these things are great. They are a temporary solution. If you it's a rehab
approach. That's more of like a Band-Aid if you're not continuing to do it on a daily basis. It would be like tracking your macros for like a couple months and not really, I always say to my clients, like, if we're going to weigh our food, I need you to be present on this, like when using your food scale, because otherwise it's literally just like a Band-Aid of a tool. Because if you can't get to a place where, for as crazy as it sounds, I could look at a piece of chicken and confidently tell you how much it weighs. The only reason I can do that is because of getting my reps in and paying attention and looking at something, be like, oh, that's 125 grams of chicken. That then serves a purpose when I'm going out to eat and I'm at least trying to loosely track or just have like a general understanding and concept of how many calories I'm consuming. But it's the same idea. Like you can go to all the physical therapy appointments you want. You can book a monthly massage. I mean, goes even bigger to this whole idea of like, you can do all those quote unquote self-care sort of things. But if you don't deal with what's going on up here and like really get to the root cause. And for those of you not watching the video, I'm pointing to my head is to be able to get through that shit and maybe go to therapy, meditate, talk to someone, whatever that looks like for you. Like it's just going to be a Band-Aid. And it sounds like that's exactly what you experienced, just in terms of like, you dipped your toe in the water, you got your foot wet, and then you were like, okay, if I'm going to keep living this lifestyle of lashes, like, is that what kind of prompted you to start to do your own research and look into other methods that you could continue to use on a regular basis that now show up as like some of your cars videos that you post of like showing different stretches people can do?
Not immediately. I actually went through that another time or two in my life. Because even though I was like working out and training, I think, on the training aspect, like having someone who can really take what you do into account and help you work the areas that you need to, like my trainers were great. And I didn't know any different either. I didn't know functional range. I don't even know if it was like necessarily a certification or a thing people were learning necessarily then. It's probably been around a lot longer than I knew of. Right. And that's what, like the cars, the mobility stuff, that's what I've learned. And that's what's really helped me. Would have definitely saved me then, would have definitely helped me then, because I would have implemented it given that I was regular in the gym and, I was stretching and like foam rolling and all that crap, but it's just that repetitive static position. If I did that today, if I did lashes 3 days in a row without really taking care of my body, like I would feel the same way, because it's like muscle memory or something. My body's just like, no, fuck you. Like we're not doing this anymore. So, but, it did what it did propel me to do was look at my schedule and my prices and my boundaries around everything, and looking at my hours, closing my books and raising my prices, which I should have raised even more than I did. And it really just prompted me to look at my own boundaries around what I was doing. And eventually, like the partying stopped. Like I got way more into the gym and realized that every weekend drinking was not helping me. And as all of that happened, I was getting more into the gym and I was learning more how to lift. And I realized like every weekend drinking was not really serving me. That's when my business goal started to shift too. It was just sort of like, it's almost like a college kid coming out of that phase, except for I was older. Cause I hadn't even done that in my life. Right. So I was like, we're revisiting that, and you have a little fun. And then you're like, what else can I do with my life? And I started thinking about educating in lashes so that I could get out from behind the chair. I ended up doing that. I ended up teaching for a brand. And I ended up moving to Nashville, where I ended up in kind of a similar situation because I helped somebody open a lash business and I was the talent. And so I was being scheduled by somebody else, and I had to literally in tears tell him to stop booking full sets back to back, because I couldn't sit there for 6 hours doing lashes like that, because my body I was like, I can't do it. And I don't think anybody should. So I had to, again, this is why boundaries are just so important, and especially like personal life, business, but it's so important to just be able to stand up for yourself and say no once in a while in your schedule and in your business and in your life. And kind of speak up for what you need and what you want. So anyway, that brand offered me a job like in their headquarters. And that was the first time that I actually left doing lashes full time, which was super cool. It was a really like interesting life experience because that job was not good for me and I was not good for it. But it was interesting, and it kind of helped me see what else was out there in the industry, helped me do something else. And when that ended abruptly, I moved back home. I had moved to Scottsdale even. So I'd gone to Nashville because I wanted to, worked there, did some things, met a lot of cool people. And then I got offered that job and they were in Scottsdale and I lived there over a summer, which is the hottest fucking time ever to live
Yeah.
there, is like miserable as hell. And then I moved back to Missouri where I am now in the fall to just rebuild my life and rebuild my business. And I was super burned out on the industry, the lash industry, but not physically, like mentally and emotionally. I was so done. And that's when I started to think like, what else can I do with my life? What can I be besides a lash girl? Because I've done these things. And honestly, I don't think I want what I wanted anymore. When I moved back home, I was like, I'm going to open a lash studio and it's going to be amazing. I'm the queen of the town. Da, 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 da. And then I got back and I saw how it had popped off here. Lashes had really like blown up since I'd left.
Right.
Cause I was like one of like 3 people doing it when I started. So like,
Yeah. I mean, when you mentioned in 2008, like, I mean, I didn't personally like even ever consider getting my lashes done until I was out of college, but like, I feel like now it's such a popular thing. And I used to live in Charlotte. Like there was like literally 1,000,001 places you could go. And even in moving back to New Jersey, like it was during COVID. So all those places were shut down, but like, it was very easy to find a new lash artist. Whereas I'm sure at the time you were like one of the very first people to start doing it.
I was, and that's how it was so
like
easy
anywhere.
for me to build. And that's why it was so easy for me to build and be in demand. And it wasn't hard for me to rebuild. But I had trained people here even, but now they're teaching it in schools for better or for worse. And there's a lot more people. And I realized that I wasn't sure that any of us could, and this is probably a limiting mindset type of thing. Yeah. Like that none of us could really make the money that we would really want nor deserve for me to pay somebody to sit there for hours doing that kind of work. What I was seeing was like, not worth it. I was like, that's not worth it for anyone. And I just realized like, maybe I actually don't want to do that. Maybe I just want to do something else. So that's when I started thinking about becoming a personal trainer because I had been a client for so long. And I had, aside from my very first personal trainer, who was kind of this like little entitled shit straight out of college who thought he should be like making so much more. And he was miserable. Like he would be like, well, I know like we both don't want to be here. So let's get this over with. And I'd be like, no, I actually look forward to this. I'm excited. I walked into a gym without like knowing how to do anything. I didn't grow up like athletic. I played 1 year of golf.
I would not have pegged you as a golfer. Learn something new every day. That's why it was only 1 year.
Girl, I basically just practiced my Happy Gilmore swing on the driving range. I played like one tournament, and I will say it's probably mostly due to the influence of my grandpa and my stepdad, who were golfers. And that was like kind of a childhood memory of going with my grandpa. And my stepdad also liked to golf. And so it was like I was using his
that's
clubs.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I could have done well in track, but I wasn't really a competitive kid and didn't really care about like being committed to all of that. So, so my brother was, but I was not. And I think the most that I had done is like some Pilates videos, or it's been mentioned on my podcast a couple of times, the Carmen Electra, like strip dance.
No way.
Videos.
Okay, wait, I don't even know this. And now I'm going to have to go look it up when we're done recording.
Yeah. I think it's got to be on YouTube. Like my girlfriends and I remember this. And it was something I had moved back in with my parents after my first shitty relationship. And so I'm like in a basement room, like doing Carmen Electra strip dance. I can't remember what it's called. My friend knows, but I'm always just like stripper dance. She's super hot and she would teach you how to dance and you kind of felt sexy and whatever.
So I need to know, did you see any results from this Carmen Electra?
I don't know how consistent I was, but I had fun doing it. And I think
if that's your way to get started, that's super important. And I mean, even like to tie that back to that first personal training experience you had, that wasn't great. Like, I think that says a lot about who you are as a person to kind of take that. And it sounds like you probably had some other great personal trainers afterwards, because you've kind of mentioned some who really took into account what your day looked like. And I think that's huge. There's so much we could say about that. And I'm happy to hear that you've had that experience, because I think in nutrition coaching, that's something that I've thankfully found that my clients are very appreciative of. Like when I talk to them about meeting them exactly where they are, down to the point of like,
sure, it'd be really nice for you to eat breakfast and maybe for you to get some egg whites in so that you get a little extra protein. But if you're telling me you're running out the door, you have 3 kids that you need to get on the bus to go to school, and realistically it's coffee and a protein bar, then guess what? We're doing fucking coffee and a protein bar and we're calling it a day, and we're going to get our protein in later. But so many people don't think about that. Like, and the fact that that's not a conversation that coaches and clients are having, like, blows my mind, because to me, it seems so simple, and also seems like something that we shouldn't go any further in the conversation until we understand what somebody's day looks like. But to bring it back to you having this one bad experience, like, I think that you being able to take that into a positive and say, hey, I actually really enjoy being here and I want to show up here. And maybe that was kind of your thought, to be like, well, if this guy had this perspective, how much more influence could I, Abby, have? Because I actually like this. Like, I really enjoy showing up on a daily basis. And did that influence maybe like some of your decision to want to go into the personal training space next? Or was it more the personal transformation that you had in just terms of probably what sounds like feeling better? Not even like a physical change in terms of, your pant size or looking a certain way in a bathing suit. Like, for you, I would have to imagine so much of this has to do with just like your general longevity and your health, and like waking up in the morning and not being an achy and like feeling like way older physically than you actually are. Right?
Yeah. It's
feeling like that croissant.
Absolutely. Like the croissant, which kind of happens after deadlift day. I have to say, sometimes I feel like I've been hit by a bus, but you just got to get up, keep moving,
Yeah, exactly. And that probably means you're working hard. Progressive overload is a good thing,
absolutely.
ladies and gentlemen.
I was just like, well, I'm very proud of myself today.
Yes.
Good job. You can not move. No, it was a lot of all of that. Like, I think you're right on point there. And the reason that even like my process into the gym was a bit gradual. And it's so funny because I sometimes forget this, because I don't feel like I've fallen prey to a lot of the bullshit. I think just because I did have really decent coaches, and I'm not one to, I like to eat. So I'm not really one to give up a lot of things, but I didn't really fall prey to a lot of things, but I did find the local supplement store, and they're very big around here. It's a particular brand, and they're very big around here, and they're always on the radio.
I know who it is. I think.
Yeah. And that's great. But they have a lot of different products in there. It's not just like this particular brand, but it's like the company, and they promote these fat burners. And I went in, and that's where I kind of started, was fat burners.
Oh, isn't this what you commented on one of my reels one time? When I asked like what fad trend did you recently? That like you participated in, that you'd like look at your former self and be like, oh dear.
I did never do like, I think the most trendy thing I did was like a Curves studio membership, because that was the only thing in the little town that I lived in.
Yeah.
And so I was hanging out in the circle with everyone else doing the deal. But I went in and I was like, I was sold protein powder and fat burners, which made me feel like a crazy person while I was trying to sit there, because I didn't drink a lot of caffeine. Like, I was not a coffee person. I will tell you, I was not a coffee person until I had a 7 a.m. shift at a lash studio in Nashville. But I also had to be there about 20 minutes earlier. And I also lived about 20 to 30 minutes away.
So you were waking up at 5 a.m.
And when my 7 a.m.s would fucking no-show me, there was this amazing, it's called Coco's Cafe. It's amazing. Open I don't know if it is now, but it was open 24 hours. So 24 hours or just really late. I'm pretty sure 24 hours. So it was the place to go. And they had the most delicious sugary lattes. And I would go over there and just hang out for an hour, because some asshole at 7 a.m. didn't want to come to their appointment, but I was there. And that's when I became a coffee person. I was never much of a caffeine person before that. So imagine that, these like whatever's in these fat burners, and I'm trying to do lashes, and I'm like, I feel like I'm buzzing on the inside. I can't sit still. And so it didn't last very long. And I think the protein was upsetting my stomach. Like, some things weren't right. And so that didn't last very long. But in the meantime, there was a cute guy at the supplement store that I was like, he is cute. How can I go back in there and buy some more shit so that I can talk to him? I slid my number to one of the guys because he wasn't working one particular night,
and asked him to give it to the other guy.
Yeah. And I was like,
I love you.
Tell me about, what's his name? And he ended up being a total shit, but for several reasons. But basically, I thought that we had this like really cute thing. I was like, oh, he's so cute. And he had short man complex all the way through and through. Just
Oh
take
dear.
it to any level that you want.
Oh
It was
God.
big, big dick energy
Say
without,
no more
yeah.
without the big D to match.
And I really tried to like not bring, because people can't help that. But this is the point, was that he just acted not very nice. Basically, when I turned down being intimate with him, because I was like, I really like you. Like, I went away. Like, we don't have to do this right now. And he was like, well, we're both adults. And I'm like, I am older than you, motherfucker. I know this. Like, and it was just one of those moments in my life where I'm like, wow, I'm trying to like do this thing. And he is very obviously wants something else. And the very next day he was totally different. And his rejection really, really hurt me. Like, I could not, I have to laugh about it now because I'm like, he was not worth the tears. He was not worth those feelings. But I like couldn't even talk about it at work. I would get so choked up. That's how hard I took that.
Wow.
Yeah. Like,
And
this guy
I
was
don't know how
not
many
that
years
fucking
ago this
special.
was, but to then compare that to the conversations you and I have about our dating experiences, like that doesn't even sound like the Abby. Doesn't even sound like the Abby I know at all.
Well,
You'd be like, "Thank you, next."
Yeah. Normally I give myself a little bit of time. I don't give it that much time. And I used to joke, and this has been one of my things, is like that I've had to learn to be more vulnerable, is like, I eat my feelings for breakfast. So don't even worry about it. Like, I eat my feelings, like I eat Wheaties in the morning, you know? So, but I had been sitting in gym parking lots trying to work up the courage to go in. I was very intimidated by going into a gym. It did not feel like a place that I belonged. And so I would sit in the parking lot like, you can do this. You can do this. Like, just go in and ask for an application or a tour or whatever. And I finally actually walked into the one that I ended up joining. And I will say the staff was really special then. They were just a good group of people. And his name was Jake. He showed me around and he was just so chill. It wasn't pressure. You know, they gave me a 7-day pass. I think I was able to use it once and I ended up joining. It was super good value. It was like $10 a month. So it's not Planet Fitness, but it's a different chain that's actually out of Arkansas, and they only have like maybe 8 locations, but so kind of locally based.
Yeah.
And just so nice. And I don't know really how, because I don't really know how I was this person, but I just decided that they're here to help me. I ended up kind of through mutual friends, like, or one of the gals that worked there, we had a mutual friend. So we all became friendly. Like, I became friendly with the front desk staff.
Yeah.
Like, and that was super cool. And that really helped me get into the gym. And when I didn't know how to use the machine, I'd be like, hey,
You
how do
felt
you use
comfortable to
this?
go ask them. I love hearing that, like, as somebody who works at a startup facility and is not only involved as a coach, but also on the marketing side. It's those kind of stories that just make me really happy to know that even back then that was a part of the industry, but those types of people are still there, because I think when you go into a gym and thank you for sharing that you were uncomfortable, you were sitting in the parking lot in your car, like working that, like, there's so many people who can identify with that. And I really appreciate that now, as someone who is very much in this space and like lives it every day, you can acknowledge that you started there too, and that anyone can start anything, like, and you can grow and evolve and, you know, become an expert in anything that you really set your mind to. But I think it's really important to highlight that, because just in even mentoring other coaches at our club or talking to even our front desk staff, like, there's so much power in having that conversation with somebody and just saying good morning to them, or hope you have a great workout, or have a nice day, or whatever that is. And I'm sure that is even more, it's not lost on you, coming from the beauty industry and the types of relationships that you were developing with your clients as their lash artists as well.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in the restaurant industry too. So customer service is a big deal.
Yeah.
Like, be a nice person. Don't be a dick. Right. Like,
period. Full stop.
Yeah. Just period. Yeah. And what was I going to say? I don't really remember, but, I was saying in my, a post yesterday on Instagram that it's like, what can happen when you just simply ask for help can be really fucking magical. And that was one of those times that I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I would ask them, I would be like, so when I'm working my abs, like, what am I supposed to be doing? You know? And I don't know. I just took a real interest in it. And even with that first personal trainer, if he hadn't gotten fired, thank God he did, I was about to say something, because I felt like what he was giving me was probably okay. And it was very basic. But then the workouts that I'd be doing on my own, I really didn't know what I was doing. So he'd be giving me
And
like
that's what you wanted.
fire hydrant,
Yeah.
Suzanne Summers type. So I'm like, I can do this shit at home. Like I
Go
know
back
how
to
to
Carmen
lift my
Electra in
leg.
the basement.
Yeah, right. Like I know how to do that. Like
Show me
challenge
how to use a
me.
barbell. Yeah.
Yeah. So my next trainer, he actually worked at that supplement store, which was so funny because that whole story came full circle when he
Did
told
he
me.
know the guy?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And one day I think he stayed probably at least 20 minutes after our session to tell me what had transpired in that man's life. And he had a
You got all
total
the tea.
catfish. He had a total catfish thing happen to him. Total fucking karma. It was amazing. I was just like,
I love that for
validated.
you.
Yeah. So he was also like very good looking, very young, just built perfectly. So it was really fun to like watch him work
Move.
out after my
Yeah.
workouts. I swear he did that shit on purpose, but I never would want to cross those lines. Like I just respected that relationship, but he immediately taught me how to squat. And he immediately took me into the weight room where I did not normally go and show me how to use a leg press. And so because I got to follow him and he's tall, like 6'2", 225, like perfect, like running back size. And I don't even know football, but I knew that. I was like, that is the style of the man that does the things with the ball down the field, And so walking, you're kind of just like with the cool guy. So he brings a woman like into this kind of more male filled room. And I got really comfortable. And so then I was able to go in there and feel like I knew what I was doing. And he got my form, like he helped me build my form so that when he ended up getting promotion and he stopped personal training, my next trainer and I were together for like the next year and a half.
Okay.
He's like, every client of his is coming to me with like great form. And he just expanded on that. And he was totally different in his personality because he wouldn't necessarily yell at me. Like Vincent and I had kind of like a very talking loud relationship of like, I would whine and he would give it back to me.
Come on, Abby.
Yeah. And he'd be like, the more you whine, the more lunges you're going to. I'm like, why do you shame me in front of everyone in the gym? Like, so we had a lot of fun. And then Tanner taught me how to deadlift. And it really just helped me build my confidence in the gym. And I realized how much I liked lifting and I loved that community. And I liked doing something that felt, I guess, kind of masculine and gave me a place to channel all my stress. And I will say one of the most important things was that when working with a trainer, I got to just leave my phone in my locker and I didn't have the texts and the this and the that, and this client needs that. And can you do this? And it was like 30 to 45 minutes of fucking peace.
We're back to the boundaries.
Yes, exactly. And it was something that this was so important to me that I made sure on my days that I had training appointments that I was able to get out of work on time when I had my training sessions. So I'd make sure that my appointments, like I was done. Like I am not staying late for you. I got to eat my turkey and rice and I got to get the hell out. And that was so important to me to have that time for myself because I normally did 2 sessions a week. And I loved it. So that was really important for my stress level. And also I would just go to the gym otherwise too. It wasn't just on my training session. Right. So I just wanted to throw that in there because I think that's really important for people to know, like, you are allowed to schedule the things that you need to do. And it's okay. Like cut some people off. Like number one in the service, like people will move wherever you open up for them too,
especially when you know that you're good at what you do. I think that's really, you have to know your worth and like sit in that and be okay with that. Like I remember when I first started nutrition coaching, like more so in the online component of it, like I would want to just make sure I could get a client. So I'd be super available to them, or I would be really like, oh, I'm free at this time and this time, and you can book with me and you can text me and da, 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 da. And now I'm like, my prices have gone way up because I just don't have as much time. I have another
and
role.
This is when I'm available.
Right.
And,
exactly. Yeah. And I'm like, here's when my calendar's open. And if people have to move appointments on me, I take that as like, you know what? It's okay for me to move an appointment on you. This goes both ways. Like if you have something come up with work, I'm allowed to have something come up with work. I'm allowed to have a personal life. Like it's I think we just fall into like a little bit of a trap with that.
Yeah. Service providers are human too. Yeah. And we also we tend to build our own like prisons that we love.
Yes.
of
Yes.
constant work. That is so Stockholm syndrome, like loving your captor.
I know. Really
Is
though.
so big
Yeah.
in the lash industry. It's like, it's almost like a rite of passage to go to the
Yes.
chiropractor. And I'm
And
like,
you have to like
no.
raise your hand and take some responsibility for your burnout, right?
Yeah,
Like I
totally.
definitely experienced that in the fitness industry too. And I let it go too long to the point where it just totally spiraled out of control and I shut down. Like
Mm-hmm.
I had to just like decompress times 100. Like that's not even a strong enough word for
Mm-hmm.
4 months. And I'm really grateful that I was able to actually do that. It wasn't on the circumstances and under the terms that I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
But I desperately needed it. Like I wasn't going to slow down. So something was going to force me to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
So
I would say that my coaches, the fact that I had such amazing coaches, and I hired another one in Nashville who they just really influenced me in a positive way. And the way that everyone just empowered me and were like, yeah, you look like a total badass doing your little like, clean and press with a 25-pound
yeah,
bar, cause I was always like worried about my wrists. So I didn't really want to get into CrossFit or anything like
sure.
that. But, I'm not really much of a hard, I like to lift, man. I like a good leisurely lift session. But they influenced me in such a positive way that when I went into training, I was like, I want to help other women just feel comfortable and feel badass in the gym too. Like that's super important to me. And then it sort of dawned on me within about 6 months of me even saying that lash artists really need help. And so that's sort of, we were talking this morning that when we met, I was like, I would help all the beauty professionals not feel like a
Right.
croissant.
Yeah.
So, Abby, now that we've kind of walked through what got you to the place where you are today, I think it's really important that we bring everybody into the past year, 18 months ish mark or so, because that's when we met. And even in that time, your focus for your coaching has literally evolved so much. Like I really see a night and day difference. I think I even said this at the beginning of our conversation or before we started recording in the type of content that you're putting out. And I want to share with the FYX listeners how you really have arrived here over the course of the past year versus the work that you've been doing in the last 7+ years. Because I think a lot of what you described so far is very focused on the physical, right? Like talking about how you got into fitness and highlighting the fact that you got into fitness for a need that wasn't just based on aesthetics. Like you were really going off of longevity and how you were feeling. But like we said, at the time that you and I met, your initial plans and your vision for your online business in the coaching space were to really specifically help lash artists. And I think that's probably a bit of a departure from where you are right now. So I want you to kind of bring us up to speed on like what has happened to you in these last several months that's really kind of changed your direction a little bit.
What has happened? Well, life can change and like the dreams that you had 18 months ago, like, wow, that was a totally different person.
Yeah.
But that's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say from there, I jumped really hardcore into that nutrition coaching community. And I loved it. It propelled me in a lot of ways to jumping into then like a higher level mentorship with them. And that was great. I learned a lot from that experience, but I would say one of the biggest things is that the change that I wanted and that I was expecting did not come in the form that I thought it
That
would.
you thought it was going to.
Yes. So it challenged me in a lot of ways, which things should if they're going to make you grow, right? Personally and professionally. But it challenged me in a way that I was actually feeling very activated / triggered by a lot of what was going on I was struggling with imposter syndrome. I was struggling with feeling really behind, where, maybe that wasn't necessary and that wasn't anyone's intention, but that's what was happening to me. And I was just feeling like I wasn't doing anything good enough. And I was feeling completely misaligned with the advice and with my message. So I was still really hell bent on helping lash artists. And it just got to a point where I was like, I don't really feel like anyone's listening to what I'm saying. So maybe I do need to switch it up. And I was advised to do that. And I was like, it took me a minute because I was like, that's what I really want to do, but that's okay. I took that advice and that's fine. Kind of shifted away from that. That's a hard transition for me because I felt like I knew them so well. But regardless, I still just wasn't feeling this very fat loss focused message that I felt like I was being told to market, and that I felt like I should market. My goals, like my goals weren't even really necessarily my own. They were pretty vague. And they were like, what is everyone else is saying this, so I'll say this too. Like, that's the thing that you say. And I hadn't, and also just because this does come into my personal life, I also hadn't been dating very much. So I'm sitting here struggling, stressed out, super anxious, and not feeling like I'm getting anywhere. And I actually happened upon a girlfriend from Nashville, from when I used to live in Nashville. She shouted out a coach on her Instagram stories one day that I was like, I recognize that name. Like, where has she been? She's not on my feed anymore. Like, why isn't she showing up? You know how Instagram goes.
Yep, totally.
And I clicked on it and found out that she had niched down into relationship coaching, or relationship coaching from like life coaching, which is when I had started following her. Her name is Lauren Zoller. And so you can go find her on Instagram. She's amazing. And I'm like, relationship. Okay, well, I could use some help with that, obviously. And we ended up a short DM conversation later. I was on the phone with her and talking to her about her program. And she immediately saw me. She saw me. Like, I felt so seen. She knew exactly what was going on. And I was like, this is the work that I need. Like, I allowed myself to open up just enough that she was like, this is what you need. This could help your coaching. This can help you be a better coach. And that's what I felt like. I was like, how can I help people if I can't even help myself right now?
Sure.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like, when you jumped on the phone with her, did you jump in? Because you just said, like, you recognized the fact that you weren't dating and you knew there had to be something a little bit deeper behind why you weren't prioritizing that or focusing on it or saying it wasn't the right time.
Yeah.
Did you lead with that, or did you lead with the fact that you had this vision for a business and you really were struggling with figuring out what you wanted to look like?
It was
obviously they're totally interconnected, but I'm just curious.
It actually was more personal. In our conversation and the DMs, I just was like, I really haven't dated and I really haven't been interested in a long time. And she was like, would you like to jump on a call and see how, like what might be blocking you? And being in the business that I'm in, I recognize that this is a chance to find out about somebody's program and that I'm going to have to get a little vulnerable. Sure. And I even joked with my sister, like, man, I'm pretty sure I know what my blocks are. Like daddy issues. And I like to make a lot of excuses about nobody living in my area. Like, I'm full of excuses. So I know going into the conversation that she's probably going to call me out on some shit. And at this point, I'm like, well, I've been around some coaches that call you out on shit. And sometimes you need that.
Yep.
And I'm like, and apparently, what I just made a post about this recently, but I was like, the universe was universing as it does. And apparently at this point, this was something that I was ready for, but she showed me that not only was what I was struggling with related to my personal relationships, but it was also related to how I was showing up in my business and showing up for myself. And it just and having done the work, like, it goes way back. So even struggling with self-esteem issues and then getting into the gym was related to that root cause of, like, it's essentially it's daddy issues, but like not having a relationship with my dad. Like, I'm like, that's I have daddy issues kind of a joke, but it was real, fortunately. So I actually did jump at the chance to get into her program because I knew it was going to help me just dig out the stuff that I'd been that I'd been hiding under the rug for so long, but I was literally just tripping over that and onto my face. And I realized that some of the activation that I was feeling
those
from this other mentorship was related exactly to that.
Okay.
And I remember mentioning that to her before we even started. And she was like, interesting that you would choose male mentors whenever you have this thing. And I'm like, I don't know. I really didn't think about it. It's especially when I wasn't familiar with a lot of business coaches in the fitness and nutrition industry at the time. And I mean, the community is awesome. Like, it's really nothing against them. It just wasn't maybe the best fit for me personality wise and where I wanted to go with my business. It's not like I didn't learn anything. Obviously, the change that I wanted was given to me, just not in the way that I expected it to come.
Sure.
And I just had to be open to seeing that and taking the opportunity. And I ended up in a community of women that were so supportive, and we just broke open our souls and our hearts and dove into this very deep work, which is essentially finding the root cause of your limiting stories and beliefs that are holding you back, and recognizing that that pattern and that cycle has kept happening over and over in different areas of my life, literally showing up in different areas of my life. So that was a fun month.
So once you recognized all those things, like obviously the first step was entering the program, right? And I really kind of want to walk everybody through this, because I think that you can hear and listening to podcasts, I think a lot of times we hear about these types of coaching programs, like in the context of the person who is the coach. So I think it's really interesting to hear you talk about it as a person who was a participant and enrolled in it and went through it. Because I mean, I even like, she doesn't really know this necessarily, but I feel like she impacted me too, because you invited me into her Facebook group.
Yes.
And the minute I watched a couple of her videos about how to show up in dating, or like what kind of tweaks you can make to your online dating profile, I took a completely different perspective to how I wanted to date. And it shifted so many things in my personal life. And I didn't have like this big interaction with her, you know? It's really cool.
I know. It is super cool. I've invited a bunch of my girlfriends to her group.
I know. And now I invite other people too. I know. And I think that's really amazing. And I think, you know, for us as coaches and like our goals and where we want our podcast to go and our businesses to go, like we aspire to that too. And I think it's important to be around those types of women, right? Like it's that somewhat cliche saying of like, the 5 people that you surround yourself with are who you're going to be the most like, right? So there's lots of different ways that we can now do that today, thanks to technology, which I think is pretty amazing. But to take it back to you, tell us like describe some of that work, like peel back the layers of the onion a little bit, if you're willing to share. And just kind of tell me like, once you started addressing some of these self-limiting beliefs that you knew were there underneath, like you knew they were there because like you said, they were drivers for even your decision to set foot in the gym. They were the reason why you were probably sitting in your car going back and forth on whether you really felt comfortable to go inside. But what did you then do next to now shift to how you feel right now today?
Okay. So yes, I did recognize some of that because I had already realized that the events that had happened in the most recent years really, really affected me. And I came back to Springfield and it was super comfortable and I was safe. And that's important. And I needed that time. But I also realized that I was like afraid to step out again.
Okay.
So I did recognize that. And when she kind of called me out on that one, she totally called me out on that. Like, you know, that's when I was like, I'm going to have to dig in. And that's not easy. And everyone's experience is going to be totally different because everyone has different things that's happened in their lives and in their childhood. And it usually stems from your childhood.
Yep.
And so there were some significant things that weren't necessarily like childhood based, but like adulthood based, but it's just like years of pain that comes like bubbling up and out and you're like, you just like spill it all out. But what I realized was that it was, self-worth based, fear of rejection, wanting to feel seen, but like also being afraid of being seen. Like I want to be vulnerable, but at the same time, if I'm vulnerable and then somebody rejects me because of that, like I'm going to fall apart.
Very afraid. Like that's a source of like a lot of fear for you.
Yeah. And so fear of rejection, self-worth, perfectionism is all kind of rooted in that. Shame around certain things. Like these tend to all like hang out together, shame and guilt and perfectionism and people pleasing, my lack of boundaries. Like, I don't know why I sing that like every time, like boundaries. So what I learned that was like, I feel like if we want to take some of the most impactful things away was not only did I discover the root of all of that, and I have that awareness now so that when I'm feeling those same things, I can now shift I've learned some tools to be able to shift that. I've
Amazing.
disproved those stories. Like I know that inherently that is not true. And so it's all about then working with our nervous system and our brain to rewire ourselves. And it's like thinking of like the Grand Canyon and how carved out, like, that's centuries of like water flowing through there. Just think of like maybe a more normal river, but if you want it to like Grand Canyon, it's pretty extreme, but that's how it feels sometimes when you're like, this is how carved in that those patterns are.
Yeah, they're
And if you want
super
to,
deep rooted.
and if you want to go a different direction, you have to physically start digging a new path, and you just have to keep allowing that water to keep going through. And eventually you have some diversions, like creating the new neural pathways in your brain, which I think is super fun and cool to learn about. But some of the biggest things I learned were using your voice to speak your truth. And oh my gosh, no longer seeking validation and needing that from people that's rooted in self-worth and shame and that fear of rejection. That was huge for me because in this other mentorship, I was struggling with imposter syndrome and struggling with feeling behind and struggling with like not feeling good enough, because when somebody said that I wasn't doing a good job or said something negative, and I would say like there's some constructive criticism and there's not so constructive criticism, right? Like there's things said with love and then there's just things that are said. I was like taking that so personally, like, oh God, I'm not cool enough. Like, I'm not going to be part of the club. Like I'm not going to get the pat on the back. Like I needed that. And it was like, once I let go of that, I was like, holy shit, that is amazing. Now I don't give a fuck. Right. So like, it's not that you don't care what people think, but you have to place your fucks accordingly. You have to like give them out to the people that really matter and do it for the things that really matter, and not just seeking it just because you need, to fill that void internally. So that and boundaries and non-negotiables were super huge. And
I mean, all of those things tie back to your story about your career too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like just in everything that you've described, it's like,
literally.
whoa, wow. Yes. Like this makes sense. So I'm sure you had a lot of those aha moments in going through this program for yourself. So then walk me through the transition of how that made you realize that you wanted to shift your focus of coaching. Like originally, I feel like if I look at the evolution of your content, I think like when I think the Abby I first met, I think like a lot of videos of like different mobility exercises and like some of the cars suggestions that you would have for other lash artists in terms of like how to care for themselves, or, figuring out like when to fit in different meals if they didn't have time in their schedule, and like a lot of that structure to now just a lot more of that female empowerment, understanding your self-worth, figuring out how you want to show up in your relationships, or whether that's health and fitness related, right? So tell me how you kind of like shifted in that direction.
Right. And I still love all that stuff, but I would say that it just wasn't fulfilling to me to only focus on that kind of external stuff, the external challenges, because cool. All right. You know when to eat and you know how to move. And
that wasn't even why you got into fitness. Like in hearing this whole story, it makes perfect. Like now we can sit back and be like, well, duh. Yeah.
So, right. It's like a whole compilation of things. Like I still love all that. I'm still going to teach that because it's important that people understand that it doesn't have to take like hours, but it's, if we don't heal like what's going on inside, it keeps bubbling up. And that's why people get stalled. And that's why they hesitate to invest time or money or whatever in themselves. And it really, to me, it goes back to how we show up for ourselves and in our lives, and then in our self-care.
Yeah.
So if you've never had that example, or if you're constantly people pleasing, then how are you showing up for your own self-care? Are you afraid to ask for help? Are you afraid to take time for yourself to go to the gym or to do your morning routine in the morning because like you're going to feel guilty? And if you're not paying attention to everyone else and everything else, then people are not going to like you. People are going to think you're a bad person or you're selfish. Like, fuck that shit. So like, I'm like all on this, like be more selfish kick lately. So
I love the post you did about it recently.
Yeah.
It was really
like
good.
I hardly know any women that are truly selfish. I know that there are selfish people out there. Like I'm not encouraging to be an asshole, but like a lot of us don't grow up even seeing that. And so feeling that guilt around like, oh my gosh, I went to the gym for an hour. Like, what are people going to think of me as a mom, or, if I'm taking a 10-minute break from work. Well, this is something my client and I were just talking about recently, was like, well, how many breaks do smokers take? No, they don't give two shits about the time that
that's
they're
such a good
taking for their
comparison. I never
habit.
thought about that.
It's
And
so
it's a bad habit, but it's still a habit. Like, like if you want to boil it down to
and they go
being a
outside and they
habit.
get fresh air and they hang
Right.
out with each other and they're laughing and whatever and having a
Yeah.
good time. And we're in here sitting at our desk like, oh my God, if I take a 10-minute break, then like, I'm a bad worker.
Someone's going to judge me. Yeah.
Fuck that shit. So annoying. So yes, it basically shifted into really the root of being, let's heal what's going on internally, and let's get to the root of those stories that are keeping you stuck in a cycle of wanting to try the same diet over and over again, or only looking at macros or workouts for the change, when the change is something different needs to shift inside of you. And when I was finishing that program up, it's funny because I did start dating a little bit, but I'm always like, I'm very business focused.
Mhm.
So it comes and goes for me.
Yeah.
So my conversations with Lauren would be about my business. And she could just see that there was something else that I wanted. And as I did this work, I was like, this is the type of work that I want to do. Like, this is so transformational. This is going to help women see things so differently and see themselves so differently, and help them tackle, health and fitness area of their life, or like relationship area, because you can apply this across the board. I'm just taking a health and fitness angle. And so we ended up talking about that and came to the conclusion that we needed to work together. So we did that, and she helped me really. She pulled out my actual story. My fitness origin story, again, was not necessarily rooted in like a physical transformation story, like a lot of people have. And so we took it from that angle. And so that's how and why I created the program the way that I did.
I love it. I think it's like that perfect full circle, right?
Mm-hmm,
and so
yeah.
Now tell me, like, for anybody listening, if they were relating to a lot of what you're saying and be like, yeah, I identify with that. Admittedly, I identify with that. And hearing that, if they were to want to work with somebody like you, what does your program now look like? I think you're still defining it, but tell us.
Yeah, I am really. It's 12 weeks, which is like, great. Who cares? But it's to help women break the patterns of that diet culture, kind of toxic diet culture mentality, that all in, all out, off and on type of cycle, and help them break those stories that are holding them back from the true transformation that they want. And, I say health and body goals, and it's going to be that, but it's also going to be a lot more than that too. Because when you're really aware, you can take all of that and you can show up for yourself in totally different ways. We do a lot of nervous system and stress management type of work. And then we also do talk about using nutrition and movement as ways to relieve stress and to just help you feel better every single day. Like, even if that's eating a brownie, like, it's not like, oh, no, we must only eat clean organic foods to manage our stress. So I do use personality-based training and nutrition assessments for that as well, neurotyping.
Awesome.
And then we do talk about actually applying that too, and how we can do that through tracking or through, actual workouts and things like that too.
What I really like about what you just said is the last part of, like, I think a huge differentiator with you personally is the fact that, we made the joking reference about the brownie, but it is super valuable and relevant. And then to say, like, use that mentality and apply it with tracking. I really like that marriage between the two, right? Because I think right now, and it's probably just like the clickbait component of social media and that sort of thing, but I get really frustrated sometimes when I think of things like intuitive eating, because I feel like the people that push it are demonizing tracking. And it's like everything is a tool. Everything is a tool. And I think I've said this on the show, like with 6 different guests, but it really obviously like makes me feel some type of way because I don't agree with that kind of blanket statement. Right. And like, then you see things on TikTok and like, there's just, to go back to your point about like lots of triggers coming from all different places. Like, I guess I feel triggered by these certain things. But,
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because you have this perspective of having invested the time, the energy, the effort, and the money in a very formal nutrition coaching program. It's like you did need to go through that step, right? Because I think that's so influential into how you're now packaging your coaching.
Absolutely. And I totally agree with you on that too. It's like making blanket statements like that isn't helpful for anyone,
Right.
Sometimes you're going to need, and that's really like the core of this is like, you need some awareness and then you need to be able to check in with yourself and you need to give yourself some choices. And instead of just like off the handle making decisions, like check in with yourself and really like, what do you really need and what's actually going to make you feel better? And it might not always be a brownie. It might not always be like the ice cream sundae. It could be something totally different, but we don't even have any awareness of what those other options are. We just go to what we've always known because that's how a lot of us are raised to deal with stress.
Totally.
But at the same time, like brownies aren't bad or brownies aren't good. Like there's no moral,
no food is
affiliation,
good or bad.
Right?
That's my big thing.
And I totally agree with tracking. Awareness is a tool that you can use. And like, okay, I'm aware of my limiting stories. I'm not going to live in them. I'm going to move around. I'm going to learn how to navigate that. I'm going to learn how to see what my food is made of and what actually like comprises the food that I'm eating so that I have a better sense of what I actually need throughout the day. Cause I don't know about you, but like, if I'm just kind of left to my own devices, I tend to undereat protein quite a bit. And I'm always like, protein is top of mind. Anywhere I go, I'm like protein first.
But the only way we know that is because we've spent some time tracking again, to just emphasize the fact that it's a tool.
A freaking attention.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. Yep. Like a lot of times when I work with a brand new person, I'm like, I can guarantee you that you're probably not eating enough protein. And they're like, well, how do you know that? I'm like, just give me a week. I'm going to say nothing else. I'm not going to give you any direction. I'm not going to give you any numbers. I just want you to spend 1 week without judgment, without changing your behaviors, just because all of a sudden someone's looking at it and just let's see what we learn.
Same.
And I always flip it back on them. And I say, okay, well, what was your takeaway for this week? And I find it very interesting that a lot of times when I even get a more and more advanced client who's just like in that rhythm of like, they understand how to track their food, like this starts to feel familiar to them. So there's probably comfort in that. And then we get to a point where like, should we change our numbers? Like, should we take some like adjustment to our approach? Or maybe they have an event coming up and things are going to start to shift with their goals. And in turn, our approach is going to shift too. And I'll put it on them and I'll ask them what they want to do. And it is like, they're like, well, what do you mean? They're like, I'm not the coach, you're the coach. Like, what should we do here? And every time I always come back to this main point that there are 3 or 4, maybe even 7 different paths that you can take with the situation that you're telling me that you're in. I'm going to lay out all of the options. I'm not going to tell you which one to pick. Like, to give it a little bit more of a grounded example, going out to eat is a really, really easy one for people to kind of follow. When I work with somebody who's really committed to learning how to track and has specific body composition goals, namely fat loss, when they're going out to eat, a lot of it comes down to planning. It's not about the food choice that they actually made. So sometimes people will be like, hey, like, what's the best thing for me to get from this restaurant? And I'm like, I can't answer that question for you. And they hate that response.
Yeah.
And it's because they want me to tell them. Great. And I'm like, but let's talk about why. And then the next part of the conversation is like, well, have you eaten anything yet today? Are you planning in advance? And then I back into it by saying, if you could eat whatever you wanted at this restaurant, what would you pick? And then we start from there. And then we actually look at the rest of their day and say, all right, is this realistic for me for today based on any other decision I've already made, or for this week or for the next month or for whatever amount of time it is? So it's, again, like, that's how it becomes. Like, there's a little bit of gray in that. And sometimes people don't like that, right? But that's how you make this not something that's like being bashed for being too obsessive and too controlling or whatever.
Well, that's how you kind of break some of those rules too. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna point out something here that you've demonstrated really well is that when you have a coach, it's any kind of coach, because I've seen this in several different capacities. It's really easy to rely on them very heavily to make the
Mhm.
decisions for you.
Yep.
Like you might have some idea and you might kind of know, but a big, huge lesson for me last year was learning to listen to my intuition,
Okay.
because I knew something wasn't right. That's why there
Mhm.
was so much resistance. Like
Yeah.
I knew something wasn't right, but we can take that and apply it anywhere. So as you're gaining more education, like as a client, like you can start to make some of your own decisions. And that's what you're doing is you're kind of just giving them that hand you're giving them some information and allowing them to have some autonomy in that decision making, which then will help them later down the line. When we become too dependent on wanting that specific answer all the time, just give me the answer, I don't have to think about it, then what do they do when they don't have you anymore? You know, did they fall back into their old patterns, or they just like give up? Did they like get overwhelmed? So I think that's beautiful. Then that's what, good coaches should always, I think,
Yeah.
strive to be, is like not
And I mean,
necessarily the encyclopedia, but
right.
giving you some options and throwing it back in your court. And I've seen all kinds of examples, and that's just sort of where can depend on the individual, but I've definitely been in that space where I'm like, just tell me what to do.
Yep. And I think that, one of the other questions I was going to ask you and just outlining your program a little more is like, how do you define success for your clients? But I feel like you answered a lot of that in what you just said. And I would totally agree with you, because I think, when you have that client that they kind of graduate from your program, whatever that means, right? Whether it is a 12-week thing or you've been working with, I have some clients I've worked with for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the work that I get them to do when I start to see them mastering their understanding of nutrition is like pushing them to rely on me less, right? And I think like how I define a lot of my success for my clients, but also me as a coach, is how few people will not come back to me. Right. Because if
Right.
all of a sudden in 6 months they're texting me, be like, shit, I put 10 pounds back on, like I'm super disappointed, then I feel like I didn't do the service to them. And it's taken me a while to get there. When I first started, I was really focused on just like, oh, I have to help this person get this transformation as quickly as possible. Or like,
in a certain amount of time. Yeah.
yes, like I felt so uncomfortable with the idea that like I could have a client who is 12 weeks in and maybe they've lost a few pounds. And I would like think that I was not doing something right, or I'd be afraid if that person didn't stay with me. And now I've totally taken a different perspective that's only come with the maturity of having more clients and trying to coach and like test different things, different ways, and how you work with people and just gain more information, even just podcasting and talking to people who don't work in this industry and getting ideas from them. Because like you said, this is any type of coaching. It's not just nutrition coaching, right? Not just fitness coaching. That I've gotten totally okay with being like, well, this person, I don't really think that they get what I'm trying to help them see. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Totally fine.
Yeah, it's totally fine. And, it's totally fine if somebody just likes having a coach because they want one.
Right.
Like, just in case there's people out there like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to not, like, if I honestly, there's certain times that you just need someone to help you take certain things off your plate. And if that's someone else doing my macros for me or making my workouts, okay, cool.
Yep.
Like
100%.
because then I can focus my energy elsewhere. But yeah, it's really all about those little moments and recognizing that you have those little aha moments where you're like, okay, this thing happened and I made this decision differently than I normally would have. Then it's like, yes, like that's a win. Or even if it is like I stepped on the scale and it didn't ruin my day, or I ate a brownie and I didn't feel fucking guilty. Like, I didn't label that food as bad today. There's so many different wins, right? Or I got myself out of a self-talk spiral. Like that's also huge. Had a little client win where she was just feeling frozen after a meeting at work. And instead of sitting there, she got up and went for a walk. And she was like,
that's great.
I immediately felt better. She was like, I get it now. And I'm like, yes. And now you can use that knowledge to take yourself out of that again. I'm the same way. Make a
different decision next time. Yeah.
Exactly. And then it becomes something more habitual and you don't sit there for so long in that space. You can get yourself out of it.
100%. I love all of that. And I want to be respectful of your time because I know that we could talk forever. But
I know, I only guess also that.
yeah. I want to make sure that you plug at the very, and we'll do this at the very end, but I want to make sure you not only plug your coaching, but also your podcast, because we didn't get super into that in this conversation. Yeah. But I feel like that's kind of the next step in your coaching and having this other platform to be able to just kind of talk about everything we've discussed today in a little more detail. So tell me, like, what inspired you to wake up one day and be like, okay, I'm going to start this podcast? Because I know we talked about it a little bit back and forth, and you asked me what I thought, and I gave you my advice on if I would do it differently.
Yeah.
But I'm super proud of you for going for it, and I love it. I think it's awesome, and I hope that you're getting fulfillment from doing it too.
I love it. It's so funny because that's sort of inspired by my long dating history, which we have sort of previously discussed, but I actually used to date a lot, and have a lot of stories. And I've been a part of a lot of weird conversations and experiences over the years.
That's why you always entertain me when we're DMing.
My lash clients have long said, like, you need to write a blog, but I could never write it. I've actually tried, but I was like, I can't, it just isn't the same as when I speak
Deliver it. Sure.
And it also depends on who you're telling those stories with and like the things that they come back with. And so basically I just refined a comedy act over the years about dating because I would tell these stories again and again, and I would find like what hits the best. But it really came from kind of that inspiration. And then I told a story, speaking of that other mentorship, this is one of the like funniest things to come out of that, honestly, was there was a lot of like weird chatter at the beginning of our calls when this first started. It's kind of like there's been some evolution in how they do things. But at first we had these particular type of calls, and something came up. I mean, if you really want me to get like a little bit detailed, and then I'll just like hurry it up. But something came up about pegging. And
on the call?
No, in the chat. And I was like, what the fuck are they talking about? Like in the Smith, like who are men? I can never not think about sex and their penises. So I'm like, what the fuck are they talking about? Also, I have a story, but I'm not going to type it out in the chat. So on the call, I'm like, hey, I have this story, and they're like, entertain us. And I'm always happy to. And so I told the story, which is one of the episodes, about this conversation that I had with a guy on Bumble, where he very like nonchalantly and pretty quickly revealed that he enjoyed pegging when he experienced that with his girlfriend. And I was like, okay, like
just like after a few messages back and forth.
Yeah. I mean, there
not
was
much
like,
dialogue. Like, hey, how's the weather, by the way?
By the way, when I get freaky, I like this to happen. And you know, there was a little bit of a lead in that I didn't like necessarily, because I was like, I'm not sharing any of what I said.
Right.
Let myself be known. And that's not their business. But I mean, there was a little bit of a lead in, but nothing like that. Like, I think I said something about a blindfold, and then he was like, oh yeah. And then the next thing you know, you're getting pegged and you like it. And I was like, wait, what? That's a kind of a different extreme, but like, okay, sure. I mean, laughing, crying face, because I have no idea what else to say. So I tell this story. The point is that I tell this story to not just women, like I've told for years. Yeah. I tell it to some dudes, like in your, like crying,
your lash appointments. Now you had a totally different audience.
Yeah. I'm like, so dudes think that they also think this is funny. Cool. The next morning I was driving to work, and I was like, I could totally make a podcast based on like all my weird conversations, because that one had just happened in the last year. This wasn't like a 10-year-old story. It just happened like the previous fall. And I told my sister. So my sister's, she's been a virtual assistant and niched down into podcasts. And now she is actually a coach as well for virtual assistants. So it's like probably a small plug for her, but whatever. She's my sis. She's amazing, but she was like launching a podcast VIP day, where basically it's like helping you launch your podcast. And I was like, so I'm like, sister, I've got this idea. And she's like, I want you to think about this, because I don't want this just to be like shiny object syndrome for you. And I was like, okay, I'll sit on it, and I'll let this mull over. And over the next month, I started talking about it. And I actually went to one of the nutrition coaching conferences and started talking to several different people about this. And number one, all the dudes think that this shit is so funny if I talk about pegging or sex or dating stories or whatever. But I talked to one of the female coaches, Christy Campbell. Do you remember Christy?
Yep.
Okay. Yes. We had a big conversation about this, and she helped me think about it in a broader way of like bringing all of the things to the table, the health, the fitness, like, the dick talk, like whatever. And that's sort of how it began to form into that bigger idea of what it
as like,
is
how is
now.
this the potential value add to your coaching? Like I can
rather than just dating stories.
Yeah. Like now that we kind of backed into this because you talked about your whole evolution and then what your coaching currently looks like, what it was going to look like. And I remember at first when we were messaging about it, I remember where you said you felt stuck because you were like, is this just like a weird departure from, because I'm trying to fulfill like, oh, I think this is funny. Like people might be interested in it. And hey, there's nothing wrong with entertainment, for the record. Like, yes, education is great to like be sharing that kind of message. But I think too, I'm not going to like name any names to like diss any podcasters, but there's a new podcast that recently started, and the person who started it like has a huge social following. And I was very disappointed by the podcast because it was so self-serving. Like it was literally just like, go check my Instagram today. I did this on Instagram, and then I went to this place and I got a $45 salad. And I'm like, really? Like I literally felt like I lost brain cells. Like I could have just gone on her Instagram and got the same information, right? So I hear you, because you don't want that.
You share in your fucking stories.
Exactly. Yeah. Like you don't want that reaction to what you were trying to do. So I totally get where you're coming from. But I think what I've noticed, and it was probably came out of that conversation with Christy, right? Like you've now taken what is a funny situation that you can laugh about and then say to somebody who is listening, well, here's what this demonstrated to me. Here's what my reaction demonstrated to me about myself. Or here, if you're in this situation, like this is what I suggest doing. And I think that's so valuable, because I feel like outside of the conversations you and I have where you're like, oh, I totally get where you're coming from, so many of my girlfriends are very afraid to show up as themselves with whatever opinions that they have when they're having a conversation back and forth through an online dating platform or something like that. Like so often I'll screenshot texts to my friends that I sent to a guy, and they're like, why did you say that? I'm like, why the fuck not? Like they're like,
are you ever going to meet this person? Probably not. They're probably going to like freaking delete you. Big deal.
Exactly. So if like that's
so many fish in the sea, bye-bye.
Right. And so if that's like not, again, to take it all the way back to the relationship coaching that you received, plain and simple, if that's not aligned with you, like what do you have to lose? Nothing.
Right. And that is a really like, it was like, cool. I can have a place for some of this fun stuff, but I can bring it back to us at the end of the day and like how we're caring for ourselves and self-worth and all of that. And then also I know all these cool coaches, and they can bring them on and have them talk about the health and fitness stuff that I'm not an expert in, or just have another voice added to the pool. And that's what's been so fun about it. And I do get I did have a lot of like lash clients. They're like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. Like they love being a part of it and they love hearing about it. And I definitely have felt that it's taking a tiny spin away from really being about like the personal fun stories of like the lash room days, because number one, those days are coming to an end. The lash room is coming to an end. But also like, yeah, those dating stories are fun, but like, I'm like, there's more important things to talk about. So like, if I'm going to talk about getting involved in like some weird texting scam, which is going to be an episode, or the Tinder swindler, it's all going to come back to the fact that self-worth and non-negotiables, all that fucking shit can be solved. I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying I haven't fallen for some crazy shit. I mean, I have some episodes on that. So I like, there's no judgment, but it gets me a little riled up, because I'm like, there's just an epidemic of low self-worth, and we are putting up with breadcrumbs whenever we should be getting the whole freaking cake. Like, I don't know. That guy, really?
Oh yeah. When you told me the breadcrumbs thing, I liked, that's my motto now. I love that.
No more fucking breadcrumbs. We're not settling. But I've also, just because I can't be on my high horse, like I've also been called out for settling, even when I thought I was like really ahead. So it's a process. It's a practice, just like anything else, just like lifting weights or learning how to track your macros, like learning how to stand up and for your self-worth and in it is like, it's a practice, and it can take a lot of time, work, and just continually showing up for yourself. remembering
we're going to make sure
non-negotiables.
that
It's like the sexiest thing ever.
Yes, it is though. It can be depending on how you look at it. But
Well,
we're going to make sure that we plug all of that down in the show notes. I don't think we didn't say the name of the podcast, which by the way, it's called Crushing It.
It's Crushing with Abby O.
Okay.
Crushing It was taken. So
okay. So Crushing with Abby.
Yeah. That's
Go check it out. But I'll link it so that it's super easy for everybody to find. If you like this show, I'm going to just say you'll probably really love hers. So I would encourage all of the FYX listeners to go ahead and check it out. But Abby, I have had the best time chatting with you. I feel like every time we talk, I learn something new about you. And same. I'm just honestly like, I really want to acknowledge your growth in the very short time that we've known each other. And it's been really amazing for me to kind of witness that and us to be able to give advice back and forth. Like,
I love it.
One of the things that's been really cool from the coaching program that we've been a part of, and you referenced it so many times, is like the network of people that it's given us access to. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. I feel like I've just developed such valuable relationships in the last almost 2 years now because of that group. And we would have never crossed paths otherwise, which is so crazy to think about, right?
Absolutely. And even like, it doesn't matter what my experience was because it's going to be different for everyone. I mean, it matters, but it matters because for me, right? But it's not like I didn't get anything from that. And
for me, that's the best part I've gotten out of it.
At the very least, there's always going to be something that you can take away from every experience. That's kind of a blanket thing there, but from experiences like this, you can take something away and or what you don't want in your life. So there's that too. But I love that we have that connection. And I love that we have it kind of apart from like the broader picture. Cause we just talk about like more personal stuff and podcasting. And I appreciate your encouragement and guidance and advice. Like, I love it. Always hyping me up on the podcast stuff. Like if I have a random question, I'm like, I don't know who else to ask. And you're like, yeah, like, that's so great. I love it.
You go, girl. I'm super proud of you. I know how much work it is. So seriously, like anytime I have a fellow podcaster around, I always want to make sure I shout them out for that because it's not easy, but it's really rewarding and it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
I'd like to end all of my episodes with a quick little lightning round, just fun questions.
Oh God.
And then I'm going to let you go. You ready?
Yeah, sure.
All right. If you could only have one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Why do people ask this question?
It's a good one. And you brought up brownies. So I feel like I had to bring it. I had to bring something back up about food.
Chocolate. Oh, man. I know I'm supposed to answer this quickly. It's okay. It's a burrito of some kind, honestly.
All right. Anything specific? Like, does it have to be Chipotle or like you make it yourself? What are we talking here?
Oh my gosh. Probably just made it myself.
Okay.
Like chicken, lettuce, guac, salsa, onions, bell peppers.
You get a little bit of everything every time. So I feel like that's not a bad way to look at it. You can, or even the likelihood of not getting sick of it. Maybe it's slimmer than other food choices.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I eat them all the time. So, and usually they're like burrito, they're like wrapless. So basically just a big ass salad.
Yep. Little burrito bowl action. I always say to my clients, like, I don't really necessarily like cook specific recipes. I just throw a bunch of stuff in a bowl and eat it.
That's precisely me. I'm like, please don't ask me for recipes because I literally don't mess it. I don't measure anything.
I'm not a cookbook girl.
Yeah. I'll do it like once or twice if it's an easy recipe just to get the hang of it. And then I usually want something that I can just,
totally.
Absolutely.
I'm with you there.
Same.
What is your favorite exercise to do in the gym? Like, especially as someone who, you never thought you would clean or press or anything because you were always worried about your wrists, right? Like now that you've really had this transition in the gym, like what do you enjoy doing when you, like what makes you feel the most powerful when you go to lift?
Upper or lower body, compound or isolate?
Oh my gosh. Let's do one of each, one upper, one lower.
Well, I will say that, I could choose deadlifts and that's a compound and a shoulder press. I freaking love upper body because mine just shapes up so well.
I love upper body too. Yeah. I also feel like whenever I've been training hard for a while and then I go into a calorie deficit, I always notice the physical changes like in my biceps and stuff first. And shoulders. Yeah.
I got a sick pump like last week and I was totally in the mirror after doing some bicep supersets. I was like in the mirror, like I had a t-shirt and I was like, yeah, look at these. Like, I don't give a shit. You got to acknowledge your work,
Yes, you do. And like, again, just, to tie it back to everything you said, like that's a huge win for you based on what you described of where you were mentally, emotionally, everything over the last like 7-8 years, right?
Or whenever you spent a long time like not liking yourself, and when you're like, look at the changes I'm making for myself and look what my body is doing, and like look at the shape it's taking. It's important to acknowledge that, especially when you haven't really loved yourself very much. Got kind of deep there.
So, beauty question.
Yes.
Outside of lashes, like, is there, like, could you have ever seen yourself doing anything else? Like whether that was like hair or like
makeup
anything
artist
else with makeup? Okay.
Yeah. Makeup artist, because I actually had a pretty strong interest in that. If I were going to,
makeup always looks great. So that makes sense.
I mean, I'm not claiming to be like, I keep it very simple. Yeah. There's not like a lot of like, thought,
contouring, layering.
Yeah. Right. Like I pick up some tricks here and there, but yeah, lashes was kind of something I fell into, but it's always like such an instant gratification. I do love a good lipstick. I would say that's probably my other thing, but I was, making women feel, if you can make a woman feel like more confident and pretty, and even if it's just that external thing, there's something that shifts internally. Mm-hmm. And I think people miss that a lot when they talk about, especially men, like makeup, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know what? Just
there's so much more to it. Put
your hat on and just go hide your bald head somewhere, whatever. About to get mean.
Well, on that note, I'm going to finish it off with a slightly deeper question. It's longer than like a quick answer.
Okay.
But if somebody's been listening to this and they made it all the way through to the end, we've obviously talked about a lot. But if there's just one key message or one key takeaway that you'd wish for someone to take with them after finishing this episode, what would that be?
You are more powerful and you are worth more than you could possibly know. So keep striving to shine bright and don't fucking settle.
Love it. Amazing.
Not for breadcrumbs.
No breadcrumbs. Maybe that should be the title of the episode because I love that so much and I stole that from you.
I know. I'm pretty sure I stole that from Lauren, so we're just passing it on.
It's cool. Well, Abby, this has been such a blast. I am so grateful to have you as a friend, as a colleague, and as you know, I started a little series for the month of March where I'm focusing on women all month long. So I just want to tell you that I'm really glad to include you in this group and really make the focus of this little mini series I'm doing inside of the FYX podcast for the month of March in celebration of Women's History Month. It was just International Women's Day the other day.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is perfect timing for this episode to come out. And I think your messaging really hits home for any day of the year and any time of the year, but even more so right now. And it's just perfect that I get you to include you in that. So thank you so much. And last but not least, please tell us where we can connect with you. Where can we find you on social media? I know you had an Instagram change recently. So tell us where we can connect with you. And if anybody's interested in learning about your coaching or working with you, what they should do.
Absolutely. First, I will say thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor. And thank you to the listeners for taking the time to listen to our conversation. And you can find me on Instagram at Coach Abby O. It's ABBYO. O'Sullivan is my last name. So Abby O. And if you're interested in the program, there's links in my profile, or you can go to abbyo.com and find all of the information there. You can apply, you can set up a free call with me. We can chat and see if it's the right fit for you. And then, of course, the podcast is Crushing with Abby O, and that is available wherever you listen to podcasts. That was so newscastery. That was so podcastery.
No, that was perfect. It was so well said. You know you're a fellow podcaster when you just nail that whole part.
Right.
But even or have been on enough podcasts where you get interviewed. Because sometimes I stumble on that. Yeah. So, but again, all down in the show notes. We'll make sure that we put this up on Instagram and everything. And you guys know the drill for all the FYX listeners out there. Share this message. I promise it will have an impact on somebody, whether you realize it or not. And, I've been saying this often at the end of every episode for my last several episodes. Posting this and sharing it on Instagram is super cool, but I think there's a lot to be said for taking a link to an episode like this and literally texting it to a friend and starting the conversation there. You never know what that can lead to, not just for that person that you think might get something out of it, but for the relationship between the two of you. And I think that's something that's really special and really amazing. So this has been another fantastic episode of the FYX podcast. Appreciate everybody who tuned in today. And from wherever you are listening, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.